Ladies and gentlemen, we meet again towards Parashat Emor, and in the middle of Parashat Emor, we have what is known as Parashat HaMo'adot, all the time-related events that we have during the year. So, of course, it starts off with talking about Shabbos, but then it talks about Pesach and goes through the whole year, all the events we have time-related. Now, the interesting thing is that time-related issues in Judaism are not time-related as far as the hour is concerned, or the month is concerned, or the year is concerned. It's got to do with the day. When does the day of Shabbos begin? When does the day of Shabbos end? When does the day of Pesach, of Shavuot, does it begin? When does it end? It is according to the beginning of the end of the day. When does a day begin and when does it end? So we know from Bereshit Vayi Erev Vayivoker Yom Echad that in Jewish life, the day begins from the evening before. So when does it begin? Does it begin by sundown? But does it begin when it gets dark? What is the exact point? So there is a machlokes. There's a difference of opinions in brachot, in Perek Daled Mishnah Aleph. The issue is that when do we start davening Ma'ariv? We can daven actually, we can daven Ma'ariv when finishing davening Mincha. When do we finish davening Mincha? So, Chachamim say until the evening. We can daven Mincha until the evening and then we daven Ma'ariv. And Rabbi Yehuda says until Plag HaMincha. Plag HaMincha is an hour and a quarter before it gets dark. So if this is not disturbing enough that there is a difference in opinion of one of the most important issues in Judaism, when does a day begin and when does it end? Chachamim and later generations make it much more complicated by telling us that Rabbeinu Tam, one of Gedolei Yisrael from all generations, had a third opinion. And Zman Rabbeinu Tam, the time of Rabbeinu Tam, is in 72 minutes, which is about an hour and a quarter, after it gets dark. So we've got actually three opinions on one of the most crucial issues in Judaism. When does a day begin? When does it end? But the most frustrating of this is in Tractate Brachot, in Masechet Brachot, in Daf Kaf Zayin Amud Aleph. It ends off this discussion by the Avad Kamar Avad, the Avad Kamar Avad. If you want, you can keep it this way. If you want, you can keep it that way. What is going on here? Something so fundamental in Judaism. What's the cutting point? When did the day begin? When does it end? There are three opinions. One says an hour and a quarter before it gets dark, which is Rabbi Yehuda. One says when it gets dark, which is Chachamim. And one says an hour and a quarter after it gets dark, which is Rabbeinu Tam. And all are acceptable. It's all true. It's all acceptable. What is going on here? This disturbed me for many years. And I'm going to tell you a few stories that clarified all this for me. First story is, I met a friend of mine who is studying botanics in university, in the Bar Ilan University. And he is studying photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is actually how all plants accept energy from the sun and turn this energy into using it for pumps that pump the water from the roots to the top of the tree or to the top of the plant. And it's actually solar energy. The first to use solar energy are the plants that we have, and that is called photosynthesis. So he was studying it on a plant which is which is the smallest during the winter and which is the biggest during the summer, which is a grapevine. And accordingly, he every day had to measure how much it was growing. So you have to understand in plantation and botanics, whilst this photosynthesis, why the solar energy is so amazing in plants do not have a battery. That means they cannot absorb energy now and use it later. That means as long as the sun is shining, they can grow. When the sun stops shining, they stop growing. So he was studying how much do they grow every day. Within this work of his, that he was trying to find out exactly how much they grow every day, he put in another component, which is when do they stop growing? And he found out that an hour and a quarter before it gets dark, the vegetation closes up. Photosynthesis doesn't happen in the last hour and a quarter of the day. The sun is at such an angle that the vegetation does not collect energy from the sun anymore. So we understand Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda was connected obviously to the botanic world, to the vegetation. And he said, look, the day is over for the vegetation an hour before it gets dark. So that's the end of the day. Chachamim saw what we all see, what gets dark. That's for the human eye. Okay, so we're left with the question, what is with Rabbeinu Tam? And for that, I have to tell you another story. I was on Miluim a few years ago on the Jordan border. On the Jordan border, we have a long fence, which is an electrical fence. It's not electrocuted. That means if you touch it, you don't get electrocuted. But it's an electrical fence in such a way that anything that touches it and pushes it, a light goes on, and we know exactly where it's touched, and we send jeeps and we send our IDF soldiers that are in the area to go and see who has been tampering with the fence at that point. So I was on Miluim, I was on my service in IDF, and my job was to be the driver of the commander, which means when something touches the electric fence and the light goes on at a certain point, so the soldiers which are in the area have to go, but then somebody high ranked has to come in his jeep and decide exactly what to do. So he drives there with a driver, of course, and with a non-Jewish Bedouin who understands, he can understand the prints and say, this is a print of one person, of two people, of this animal, of that animal. He can, by the prints that he finds on the ground, he can tell us exactly what touched the fence. Okay, so and that IDF Miluim, I was the driver of these two people, of the higher in command and of this Bedouin who Gashash, he has to find out exactly, has to see the marks and have to get there quickly. So I was called up to go to see a certain point, and it was the first time for me. So I get into the jeep and I drive as fast as I can with the commander and he's telling me, don't drive so fast. It's most likely just an animal. So I said, how long have you been here working at this? So he says, I work for the IDF already for 15 years. I can tell you most of these calls are just animals, night animals who just can't see the fence, and they run and they hit the fence, and then we all have to jump and have to do as if who knows what's happened. So I said to him, and when are these night animals active? So he said, well, about an hour and a quarter after it gets dark. I almost made it excellent. Animal world of night animals is active an hour and a quarter after it gets dark. That's Rabbeinu Tam. So it's all true. Da'avad kamar avad. It's all real. There is Rabbi Yehuda is true, and that's true for the vegetation world. Kishetech when it gets dark, is true for our world, and Rabbeinu Tam is true for the animal world. And that clarified for me something that disturbed me very much in this week's Parsha, that everything is time-oriented according to the day. And this Gemara, this piece of Talmud with the three different opinions and the halacha that we could do either this or that makes sense to me. Just want to share with you an idea, slightly different to what I usually share with you, but I think it's an amazing insight. Shabbat Shalom.